There was one wording suggestion.
Oh, it was just
mentioned to me.
Just a paragraph. Adding a paragraph.
Thanks, Kathy.
Which paragraph is it?
So the second paragraph. So the mythology and reasoning for identifying the areas to protect. So that sentence, I think, after that full stop needs to be a new paragraph. So the sites and areas of significance to Maori have been identified. Blah, blah, blah.
It's a different topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know where you are. Sorry.
So we're on areas to protect.
Yeah.
So on page 40 of our most recent version, if you look underneath the blue, the areas to protect, areas to avoid or mitigate, that paragraph there. So that first sentence, the mythology and reasoning for identifying the areas, blah, blah, blah. Then full stop, I think from the sites and areas of significance to our Maori should be another paragraph.
But does the third sentence, does that report deal with sites of significance to Maori as well? Is that a omnibus report, not just? So can you just give us some help with that? There's an areas to protect.
I'll go and check that.
Yeah.
I'll go look at that now.
Because if it is inclusive of all of the areas, including the Maori areas, we just need to leave it as it was.
Okay.
But otherwise, if the Wahitapu and other areas of significance are not dealt with that report,
Okay.
Nicole's right.
Yeah.
So you'll come back to us when you find it, Tracy. Right, let's move on.
So the next ones I think were less controversial. So this is just to do with renewable energy and reducing carbon. So there's just 2 additional recommendations in response to submissions, just about further acknowledgement of renewable electricity being important for achieving a low carbon future.
That's certainly right in tune with today's planning framework. So we've got that in front of us there. It's on page 46 of our latest version. Look at that, where it fits in.
Do we need anything in this one to deal with issues like location, scale, sensitivity to the environment in a spatial context or not? Probably actually it's probably a RPS thing rather than Greater Christchurch Partnership.
I think this is just one of the opportunities. We're looking to, if you read the title, Grant, I think, reduce and manage risks so that people and communities are resilient to the impact of natural hazards and climate change. So I think those matters go to the next level of detail around siting. And remember, we don't have any, there's no hierarchy to these. They all need to work away together. Okay, so the changes to page 77 and 46. So the 77 one is about well-connected centres, competitive performance, leverages economic assets. So that's coming to there as well. So I'd suggest that the panel's comfortable with these changes. Any clarification of that?
Stephen, which page are you on of the?
So there's
14 November.
There's one at 77 of the latest change version.
77.
And a table which talks about current and planned state of strategic infrastructure networks.
Bullet point at the top of 77. Does it work? Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Lock that in.
Cool.
Thanks, Liz. We'll move to the next.
So the next one's to do with the national grid.
Grid.
So similar thing on that same page, new bullet point below the one you were looking at. That just
77
talks about-
again.
Yeah.
And this responds to the transfer submission, which you can't underestimate the critical nature of that national grid. And Christchurch is a bit of a hub.
So is that an entirely new paragraph?
Yes, it's another bullet point coming into that list of planned state of strategic infrastructure networks. So in my mind, it was clearly a laguna, if anyone's heard about that term.
What's it called?
A laguna
No.
is a gap in sort of policy documents, something missing. So it's a term that smart lawyers have taught me in the last couple of years.
So my query is in relation to the last sentence. While existing national grid assets are identified on the spatial plan maps, yeah,
Yes.
new development will necessitate new assets, particularly to connect to new generations. So what?
So think about the new solar project that the airport's planning.
So I understand that, but what are we doing in the maps? Or-
Nothing.
Nothing.
It's just to say at the moment, we've only mapped what's there. But it's just acknowledging, because of the context of this paragraph is about current and planned, it's essentially saying there might need to be additional things, but they're not mapped because you can't map them yet.
Just thinking ahead in the life of the spatial plan, that it's almost certain that you will be needing new grid connections.
But there's nothing that we can do to enable or facilitate,
No,
except
other-
we're just
other than-
acknowledging it.
Other than recognise, because when those, and thinking ahead to 10, 15 years in the future, when there's a new grid connection needed for, say, renewable energy, the planners and lawyers will go back to this document and say, look, from a
They had
strategic
anticipated it.
planning document, you know, we're right in the zone because at 2023, this is what it was, but spatial plan recognises that we'll need to keep planning and enhancing the national grid.
So therefore, in the future, if there are any, as the further developments come to play, it would be necessary for them to work through the necessary planning framework to achieve what they need to achieve.
But having regard to our spatial plan,
Yep.
which
We recognise it will need to
recognise it
happen,
needs to
to
enable.
be protected. Is the language strong enough?
So I think in this context, though, this is just about setting out some things about the current and planned thing. It's not about providing specific direction.
So this is the title of this. This is a direction.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a contextual thing where you're
Contextual
talking
thing.
about where is the growth of business and household going to go, but also how is that going to be integrated with infrastructure. So this is in that context of saying there's lots of stuff that will need to happen, including wastewater type upgrades, and this is just acknowledging that there will also likely need to be additional national grid infrastructure. So it's not setting a direction, it's just acknowledging that that's part of the future integration between the growth and infrastructure.
Bouncing off Victoria's thought, does it need to be stronger? If we go back to the wording of the direction itself, I'm thinking we may want to be adding strategic infrastructure into the main direction heading. Can we go back to that online? So this
is
is
it-
on page 73.
Will it be critical infrastructure rather than strategic?
Well, strategic infrastructure is the term used in the so I'm not dealing with that, I'm dealing with 5.1. Oh, so 5.1,
No, so 5.2, which this sits under,
5.2 sits under
and
5.3.
5.3, oh sorry, 5.3, which
Yeah.
this sits under, already says strategic.
5.3 already says strategic.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. So that works. I was thinking there was 5.1 was the main heading, but it's 5.3. Okay, so I'm comfortable with the linkages there.
Just the other thing I'm thinking about was there are pending changes to the NPS on highly productive soils to do with the ability, for example, for large scale solar panels to be placed as an energy source on highly productive soils, but spatially we couldn't really determine anything about it.
No, and I think when you think about these directions, in my mind anyway, there's no hierarchy. So one of the things we need to plan for and enable is strategic infrastructure, including renewable energy. And at a strategic level, those issues around that is being sorted out. We need to sort that out, but recognising and enabling is the right thing to do here. And I had a good look at the Transpower submission, and it certainly made a lot of sense to me. One of the problems in my experience with renewable energy, things like offshore wind, for example, the only logical way to bring that to New Zealand's market is to land at a shore transmission, and sometimes there's just a barrier of protection on planning documents that means it can never be done. That's why I think planners are thinking about some one-off. Sometimes this goes back to that mitigation clause we were talking about before. So for this one, is the panel comfortable to support the recommendation for the reasons provided?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll just note that and we'll move on.
So the next one is the role of infrastructure. So it's this under the same opportunity and context. It's just about adding a bit more in terms of
This is on page 47 we're going to now.
47 of the ROR.
Of the ROR version of our document.
So this is in the context of key ways to build resilience to climate change and natural hazards in Greater Christchurch. So it's just adding in and adding an some additional notes in relation to the next bullet point as well.
Okay. So that second last bullet point is is carrying on from what I said. Sometimes you just can't place lineal infrastructure outside of some of these areas. Right.
On page 14 of the draft report, it does mention the interdependencies between critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure is the name given to infrastructure that's mentioned in that bullet point. I'm just wondering if it should be in the critical infrastructure sector.
Where are you seeing critical?
At the beginning of 4.3.7, on my page 49. So if you went back to the
4.3,
4.3.7,
I don't have a 4.3.7.
which am I looking at the wrong one? No,
Which document are you in?
I'm looking at the October the 4th, the draft spatial plan.
Yeah, so in 437, which is the one we're talking about.
437, the first paragraph.
What page are we on?
Well,
49 is.
page 49, but they might have changed the page number now.
So I think you're right. So it's a reference to what the submitters said. So the submitters has talked about critical infrastructure, and the response by officers is to talk about strategic infrastructure. My understanding is because that strategic infrastructure is consistently referred to throughout the plan. So if you brought in the term critical infrastructure, you'd be using a different term.
The staff aren't recommending critical infrastructure, are they? And that's the word strategic infrastructure is in the MPSUD and HPL, and it's a term used in RPSs.
But it's
Yes, the-
4.37 though is the role of infrastructure during natural hazard events. Does that account for it being given a different name?
I don't think it has been given a different name. Is Grant reading from the strategic plan version or from the officer's report?
This is from the officer's report.
Yes.
So where it's mentioned in the officer's report, it's them summarising what the submitter has said. So the submitter has used the term critical.
Yep.
But the recommendation by officers is to use the word strategic. The word strategic is the one that's used consistently throughout the spatial plan.
There's two, in my mind, there's two, the government's issued some documents related to and given it the definition of critical infrastructure. I'm just wondering if we could just check on that, because there's a slight difference between, I think, strategic and critical, especially related to natural hazard management. And
Let's check on that.
yeah,
Because I have heard that term critical infrastructure. I don't think it's made its way into the national policy statements, but if it has, which guide us,
yeah,
we just need to find out where that term critical infrastructure is being used. But our officers are recommending the term of art we use in here as strategic infrastructure.
just as an example, for example, the critical infrastructure, strategic infrastructure, for example, for the regional council includes our stop banks, but it's not considered as critical infrastructure in terms of the government's new paper on that. And we, so there's.
This in the Infrastructure Commission report or something like that?
I think it would, there must be some, sorry.
Because do we need to have some sort of definitions then if we're going, because it's getting confusing.
Provided, and this is for me, and I'd ask Tracy for her help here, provided we're in tune with particularly the RMA national policy statements and reading used there, we should prefer those in this document over anything else that government's doing, unless we can see the right action in here. Because it's quite a big departure from what the staff are telling us. If we do use critical infrastructure, we need to know where it came from.
Yep.
There are some definitions in here, aren't there? In terms,
But it doesn't include
but it doesn't define strategic infrastructure.
or critical infrastructure or anything like that. It's got social infrastructures.
I'm wondering whether it should.
And it might be both. And I think the critical infrastructures, there's a civil defence component as well.
I think you're right, because we've had that term in play recently. But this isn't a civil defence document. This is a long-term planning document.
I think the other thing it might help to remember is that if you take a step up to what the spatial plan it's doing, in terms of infrastructure, it's saying two things. It's saying you need to be cognizant of the infrastructure when you're planning for growth, which is that sort of avoid, mitigate type thing. So be cognizant of where growth could impact on that infrastructure. And then it's also saying in this context, also infrastructure, we need to be mindful when we're planning for growth of where we need infrastructure and how we manage that as well. So I think in that context, we're not getting down into the detail that you would in a district plan, for example, where you have some quite specific direction and therefore you need to define what it applies to. Because what is strategic, I think, will flow through when you get to the RPS and you get to the district plans. What that means or doesn't mean, I think, will come out then. At this level, it's really about saying we need to integrate it with the planned growth.
Yes, let's look at this and come back to the panel, Liz. I think we should make a note to ourselves.
Yep. Got that.
For me, as I said, it's really important that the panel and the spatial plan uses the terms used in the national policy statement. So I know strategic infrastructure is in the NPSUD, NPSHPL, because there's exceptions for those. And it talks, in terms of planning terms, talks about those elements of strategic infrastructure being in the relevant RPS. So let's just get the facts on this, Liz, and come back to the panel.
Okay.
Otherwise, the lawyers will have a field day with it.
Yep.
Yep. But okay, but other than that, we are comfortable with the direction of these changes. Getting a yes around the table.
Yep.
Thanks, Grant. What's next? High soil erosion, Lois.
So in essence, I think there were some submitters seeking that erosion prone soils on the Port Hills were brought into the maps. And some the officers have said, we think that that's more of a site specific consideration at the district plan level as to how you address that. It's not a spatial strategy level constraint. So they haven't recommended changes.
Can someone tell me what page we're on in the ROR, please?
There are no.
So no changes are recommended.
Okay.
So it's just confirming that you're comfortable that soil erosion is not something that should be included in the maps for the reasons given by the officers.
So it's map 8, I'm guessing it goes on, which is on page 50 of the latest version. And there's a little map in the report, which I think they're focusing on here. So this is map 8.
Yep.
Oh, is it or not? No,
That's not map 8.
So that's from somewhere else. From Canterbury.
From the regional plan.
Can we just go back and look at the reasons again? Just have a read of those. So the natural hazard mapping focuses on the impacts of hazards on human life and property.
Isn't the reality that it's a significant issue they're raising, but it's not for the spatial plan to address it?
Yes, yes. So they're looking at this soil issue in relation to site-specific basis, which is what we were thinking about and talking with people about. There are some pockets probably there. It's not a blanket issue across all of the Port Hills. Right, you're looking.
No,
pensive.
no, that's okay.
You're good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the development of the Port Hills more broadly.
So this was the submitter Humphrey Tapper
Yeah.
Yes.
issue raised. So in essence, the concern being that the Port Hills mapping in the map 5 constraints area and whether or not that accurately took into account that some of that area will not have the same level of constraint. And so the recommendation from officers was to note that on page 47 of the right of reply.
I'm keen to go back to my notes on Humphrey Tapper. Can you remind me what day he here before us, please?
I think he was on Thursday, the 26th.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3:30. So it was the submission number.
There's no
Yeah.
further recommendations from the staff after hearing. So they have responded with this wording, Liz, haven't they?
Yes, that's right. Once we have. I think the other thing it might be worth noting is that in their reply, the officers confirmed that map 5, which is the one that the submitter was particularly concerned about, confirmed that it was a adding together of maps 7, 9 and 10, if I've got the numbers correctly, but didn't actually include map 8. So to the extent that the Port Hills is actually included on map 5, it's not related to the moderate hazard risk on map 8. It's actually related to the landscape section that's shown in map 10.
That makes sense. Thanks, Liz. I remember that now. Some of those won't be the outstanding landscapes in map 10. There'll be other landscapes, I presume, from the discussion.
Not that bit though, because that's the protected area, not the significant landscape.
So where are we looking at?
Are you looking at map 10?
At 10, yes.
So the dark blue hatching is the protected areas.
Dark blue.
The hatching or the striped.
Oh, yes. But where we got to with the discussion with Grant and the officers is that that's all sorts of protection. It's not only O&L, which are avoid areas. It includes probably significant.
No, sorry, that's the significant areas are separately mapped in terms of landscapes. So they're that light green, significant rural landscape or ecological significance.
Okay, so is the Tapper property in the light green area or the ash blue area?
Are you on map?
On map 10, page 55.
Thank you for that. I wasn't on map 10.
In memory, the Tapper land is sort of near that dark green blob, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think that would be the closest it would be with the dark green. It says open space.
So if that's in an ONL, which I don't think it is land, that would be a very difficult area to do anything with, because we're dealing with the avoid policies.
Mr. Tapper didn't seem to think so.
No, I think when we looked up his property, Victoria and I looked up his property, and it wasn't in the ONL, or part of it might have been in the rural amenity
All of
landscape,
it might have been.
but not the majority of it.
Because the issue I had at the time, and I asked Liz to look at it, was, is there anything preventing him from building there now?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that discussion.
No, and I
Conclusion
don't think there is, but I think that's also reflected in the maps, because the maps are based on the existing layers. But the point I was wanting to make clear was that I don't believe that the orange area in the Port Hills on map 5 is derived from the moderate hazards on map 8. I think it's derived from the landscape or other protections on map 10.
Okay, yes. So staff are working on this though, aren't they? To clarify the maps and also to clarify Grant's question about the differentiation of the ONLs. But are you saying, Liz, that blue hatching that protected does relate to that void level of places, landscapes and features, which will include ONLs?
Sorry, say that again.
Okay, so thinking back to Thursday, the staff see they're still working on this map 5.
Map 5.
Yes,
Okay.
still working on that because they found some glitches in it in response to our question. And then Grant also wanted some differentiation between what all those protected places, landscapes and features were, was my understanding.
Yeah.
And they're reporting back on that. Yes?
Yep. I did look at what I haven't seen is the maps from the regional policy statement of what they've identified as ONLs.
Yes.
When I looked at the study that assisted in the formation of that on the RPS, there's a Canterbury landscape study which identified ONLs as the Canterbury Port Hills, Banks Peninsula, but there was also an abutting area of ONL around Te Waiora, and the two butted up, but it's not indicating it here on that land between the edge of the estuary. So I'm just, it's just if somebody could have a wee look at that.
I think we've already asked staff to do that.
Right. Just to see if the bit to the south is actually
Yes,
part
but
of the
the
picture.
Tapper land's not the bit to the south, is it?
No. There's the edge.
There's a general discussion about, but I think what Liz's advice to us is that blue hashed area does pick up the protection layers, which go with the avoid policy and the Section 6 matters in the RMA of areas that are protected for their values, either ecological, landscape, or mana whenua values.
Yes, and I think that's the bit that, to the extent that it applies to part of the property, I think was when Victoria and I got to, where that applies to part of the property that's in the district plan already.
Okay. And the RPS?
Well, I can't answer that
Yeah,
question, but my understanding is that this map represents the layers taken from the other plans.
Okay,
So to the extent that it's included in the other maps, my understanding is it's meant to be in that map.
okay.
Yeah, it's just, it's something that I don't know. So if, as long as they've done that, but I think it's there are two, there's a description of
Okay,
Banks Peninsula and then there's another piece. And the other piece is not hatched.
you think it's some missing hatching?
Potentially.
Okay.
Just to look at the area of connection between Te Waiora and the hatched area identified as part of an ONL for Banks Peninsula and the Port Hills.
I think all we can do at the moment is note that officers are reporting back. on
Yeah,
this
so
matter.
sorry, I might have sort of misdirected you because this is in relation, I suppose, to the wording around the Port Hills,
Yes,
which was more, I think, to do with the natural hazard type risk. So I've potentially diverted you off that. I think I was trying to explain that the constraint in relation to that area was potentially more of a landscape one in any case than a
okay.
hazard one.
And you see map 7, there's lots of areas on the Port Hills that aren't there, aren't there?
Yeah.
Okay,
So the slope hazard in map 8 is not pulled through into map 5 because it's only moderate risk.
yes,
So I think with respect to this recommendation, it's whether you're comfortable that the officer's recommendation to note that there are some areas of the Port Hills that don't have that hazard constraint is sufficient.
yes,
Yeah.
which I think we all agree with that.
So everyone's happy with that.
Yes,
Yes, definitely. Yeah, wouldn't want it to go.
but there's a broader mapping integrity issue, which we're having reported back on.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
labelling.
It's just a double checking.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And,
because where
and then the
where it
labeling would
is-
be identifying on the legend
Okay.
the reference to ONL.
Just make a note, I think, just in case we don't come to this again. And the new advice due from officers. Okay, thanks. Let's move on.
So tsunami mapping. So this is that note that we sort of talked about before.
Yes. So we're now pages 48 and 49, which is what Kate picked up. I think just reading this, is this the issue? Does this solve the issue that you identified, Kate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, swapping those around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do those proposed amendments, sorry, should they be in bold? Or not? Just,
This is just from the officer's report. So
okay.
yeah. Sorry, I haven't added a panel onto this one. If everyone's
Okay.
so comfortable with that.
Doesn't respond to a submission, does it? I think it's more of a
I think it's an error that they've
error.
picked up.
Yeah, agree. So we agree to change that error.
Yeah.
And-
Right.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next other.
So this
matters.
is just two further changes that were recommended in the right of reply that relate to this topic.
Mm,
So the first one is the one we were kind of talking about, which is that making sure that map 5, which is the conglomerate of 7, 9, and 10,
Mm.
does actually include all the correct layers.
okay.
my recollection was it didn't pull everything through from map 10. It wasn't related to those protected areas. It was more to do with the open space areas, I think.
Okay, and
And including that airport symbol in the
79
Legend.
and 80. So that's with the transport network. Okay,
happy with those?
yes, we are panel.
Okay. So we're now into opportunity 3. Sorry. So the first one is to do with general comments around this topic.
Opportunity 3 is to do with protecting, restoring and enhancing the natural environment with particular focus on Te Ao Māori, the enhancement of biodiversity, connectivity between natural areas and accessibility for people. It's quite a broad one. So what are they saying in terms of the submissions here? Just
So I
remind
think
ourselves.
some of these broad level submissions
Talks about the integrated blue-green network strategy, which is in the work program.
yes, I think they're saying they don't recommend changes in response to just the broad submissions. But they think some of the comments made by submitters could inform the actual strategy that's the next level of work. Talk about the wording of the direction itself, and that's where they've recommended this rather than avoid development in, it's protect areas.
So this is at pages 30, 61 and 63. So we can just see the context of where those words fit in. So 30.
So probably if you go to page 54 in the right of reply, which is where opportunity 3 starts,
Oh,
and you
yeah,
can sort of
sorry.
see it in context.
Yeah.
So you've got your overarching opportunity, got some
That's-
contextual stuff, and then it goes into the 5 directions.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Happy with that?
So I just went to page 61. So that reference 3.1 there, even though we're suggesting just to have protect areas, it was still identified in the areas to avoid and protect background report. So the background report obviously referred to both of those, but of this we're just saying protect.
Yes. And Grant, in my mind, this seems a more sensible term, because moving on from that King Salmon and Davidson Supreme Court cases where avoid, they've brought in, avoid was said, avoid is avoid is avoid, so you can't do anything. There's been a whole lot of policy which has brought in the concept of compensation, offsetting, and you can protect values by doing other things.
Yeah.
So I certainly support the change of words here, avoid development in, which would mean under any and all circumstances, which the new way the NPSs are couched in my reading is protect has different ways of doing it. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm really comfortable with that change.
yes, okay, so I think around the table we are. Thank you.
Okay.
Health and well-being of water bodies.
So this, I think, is to do with direction 3.2.
Yes,
So I think in terms of the direction, recommendation is made to include specific reference to wetlands. Amend the map page, sorry, the map 10. To
so
show
the wording change comes in at 38.
Yeah.
Which seems to fit in there quite well.
Yeah, which is the bit that talks about the blue-green network.
So this is where there were some submitters talking about protection of groundwater being a blunt statement. Direction 3.2 is a blunt statement which does not acknowledge the mechanisms and instruments. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud.
Yes. This doesn't deal with groundwater though, does it?
No.
Just one little correction on the way through. We're now dealing with 6 principles, not 5, as the precursor
Yes.
talks
Yeah.
about.
The groundwater comes up in that response to submitters. It was a Somerset group.
Yeah.
So where does that go?
So I think on page 56
Yeah.
of the right of reply, there's a under direction 3.2 where it talks about the direction in more detail.
56. Okay.
So go down to 3.2, prioritise the health and well-being of water bodies.
Yep.
There's reference in that last sentence to the groundwater protection zone must also be protected.
Okay.
Okay.
And the response from officers in relation to that is essentially to say, look, that's set out in the Canterbury Water and Land Regional Plan, which has some quite directive.
Yeah.
So that's coming up the groundwater point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go back to the wetlands one.
So in essence, they haven't recommended a change in response to that
Statement.
because they think that that's accurately reflects the direction.
Just
Gail, you sorry.
there's
Grant,
sorry.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't-
you go.
there's no mention to the NPS freshwater and Te Mana o Te Wai. There's a reference to delivering on this. Is that something we need to refer to?
Tracy, can you think about Te Mana o Te Wai and any reason why it wouldn't be there? We need to check by Control F that it's not there.
There's a reference to Mana to Wai in here somewhere. I'm sure I read it. I think it'll be in this one.
Can we just do a search on that? Okay, there it is, healthy natural environment. So this is in the healthy natural environment. So can we just go up to what the heading is? Well-functioning urban environments.
For page 23 of the original.
Oh, okay.
That seems to be at a high level and captured appropriately.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to translate through to the direction on page 56.
What it could do, let's go back and look at that wording.
It's a management issue, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think under the current direction in the MPSFM, we should be referencing Te Mana Otuai in here as well.
Yeah.
Panel,
Mm.
no harm. It's already picked up in the overarching statements.
Mm.
Um, so I could even see a sentence after 3.2, prioritise.
Mhm.
The water is a tonga that is culturally significant to Maori and essential to the well-being of all communities. And then we could say something like the concept or the concept of Te Mana Otuai is specifically referenced in the MPSFM. Something like that.
There's two, the Te Mana and Kiutikatai.
Yes.
They're mentioned in the same
So that's the
paragraph.
fountains to the sea
Yeah.
in the MPSFM.
I think it is, but it would be if somebody could check that to see what basically the three obligations,
Yes.
water, people, economy. But
Could we just capture this in our recommendation box, please?
check.
It's Te Mana Otuai and the other term.
Kiutikatai.
Because that's what I was going to mention. It doesn't. There's not a lot of reference about coastal. I know it cuts off, but I think Kiutakitai would cover that though.
At the interface between land and sea.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's appropriate if the panel agrees.
Yep.
Thank you, Grant.
Good.
Thank you for your comment, Scale. But apart from that, we agree. So we're happy with those directions around wetlands, healthy water bodies.
Just wait.
So Liz, we can work on where that should come into the framework of the document. All right, let's move on.
Oh, are we agreeing to the new bullets? The bullet.
Yes, I thought we were.
Mm.
556, which brings in the sea coastal water
Integration.
integration.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, it's confirmed, I think. Yes. Just want a moment, Grant, or are you happy to just checking on that?
No, I think I think there's bullets.
Okay. Thank you. Where are we up to now?
So
Liz?
green space.
Yes. Okay.
I think the gist is that quite a lot of support for importance of green space, with potentially submitters seeking kind of, I guess, expansion of specific things in that.
Yes. So we've got this additional.
Yes,
paragraph in the
so I think
direction.
the recommendation is more in response to the Disabled Persons Assembly
Yes,
thing about universal design standards. So it's just adding in that new paragraph around how they're designed.
yes. So let's look at page 57 where this comes in.
Yeah.
This is under direction 3.2, enhance and expand the network of green spaces.
It's important these green spaces within urban environments can be enjoyed to people with all ages and abilities.
Which is quite strong, but it adds that important element
Yeah.
It's quite strong.
around the equity of access for all people and ages and abilities. We comfortable with that, team?
Yep.
Okay, just note that.
Yeah, and the second recommendation I think is just in that paragraph above, just to
proposed.
note that
Yes,
improving the quality of the environment in existing and proposed areas.
which does respond to that broad group of submitters that are looking at about thinking ahead as well. Which in a spatial plan, strategic plan is the right thing to do. So we're supportive of both of those. If we could just record those in the
Okay, yep.
recommendation panel.
Okay. Kathy, can you switch screens again, please? Thank you. So then we're into highly productive land.
Yes,
So
so
the
on to map 12,
recommendations.
page 58 of our document.
So firstly, clarifying retitling the map,
Yes,
so that rather than saying highly productive land, it effectively reflects that what is mapped in that is the land use capability class 1 to 3. Adding text on page 58 that confirms that map 12 isn't effectively undertaking the role that the RPS will need to take. And then there was an additional recommendation around that, which is on the screen in the yellow highlight, around just
current.
confirming.
yeah. Look, these are all very wise changes, in my opinion. They reflect the importance of the high quality soils, the fact that that HPL is not definitive in terms of the current mapping, and environment category is required by middle of 2025 to do a remapping process. And think about the realities of those areas in terms of their own context. So all those changes make sense to me. Is the panel supportive of those?
Yep.
Yes.
Can we just check page 17, because it has a few other changes in it that I think it's worth just looking at, because they're not just related to the soils.
Page 17 of our
Right of reply.
Page, sorry, 17.
So this is just to do with where it talks about related planning processes underway. So bottom of page 17.
I see.
So that just talks about the
yes,
regional council reviewing the framework,
yes,
that the process seeks to align the framework with national direction, including NPS for freshwater management. Also includes review of the noise contours and mapping of highly productive land.
Where are you reading from? Which bullet point?
So the third bullet point where it's got a series of
Okay.
changes.
And I see we have Te Mana Te Wai coming in here,
Mm.
and we've got managed retreat coming in here as well. At the bottom of the last bullet point. So we do have reference to all those matters. So when we get to this, so what this has done is we've gone to this because of the HPL reference, but the staff are recommending some changes. Some matters we've already discussed as well.
So that last bullet point, I think we did look at previously, but if you've got concerns about managed retreat, then
Remember we
can-
searched managed retreat. With my preference would be to replace managed retreat associated with these matters when it is enacted.
okay. I'll go back later. I'll go back later in the
To
main
make a note.
document and fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I should work on the wording of those because the panel's alive to the
Yeah.
concerns with that term. And it's not necessary to have it in here because I am aware that it's not being used in some regions already. Okay. So, and also where we're being inclusive of Te Mana Te Wai, we should double check the other principles. There, see in the middle of
So in the paragraph, that paragraph that's on the screen.
yes,
So that's, I think, because it's specifically referring to the NPS.
yes.
Whereas I think Grant, the Kyoto Kitai is more of a regional thing. So if you added it in here, it probably wouldn't make sense in that context.
Yeah, it's just checking to see if it is in the NPS.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a check to see.
The same
Because
same
they're
issue.
the two
Yep.
fairly.
Yeah. So are you comfortable with that, the changes to wording?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The green belt.
Yes. We had quite a discussion with this, with the officers. Where we talked about whether there was any unintentional consequences of the green belt being used, the area between as a area of enablement for future greenfields. The officers didn't think it would, but I think we do need to reflect on that to see whether the words are specifically clear enough so as to avoid that possible line of discussion if we don't support that. And they've got some words here. We're looking at pages 24 and 25. Pages 29, which is
So I think I had a note from the discussions on Thursday that the panel was keen on bringing the wording in from what's recommended in this map legend about the dash lines being an approximate representation, etc., of bringing that into the direction in section 3.5. I think, Victoria, this was something that you raised as a concern.
Sorry, I'm slightly lost. I'm not sure which document and which page I'm looking at.
Okay, so we're looking at, initially we're looking at pages 24 and 25 of the, not the original, because our reference point is now the councillors, the council's officer's second version,
14th November.
14th of November.
And you're on
one.
page 24 and 25 of that.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
looking at map 2,
Two.
Yep. Which is over the previous page. Yes,
and changing the legend
yes.
around the ecological enhancement.
So it says ecological enhancement, green belt,
Approximate.
and then the new words are going to say the dash lines are an approximate representative of the location of ecological enhancement green belt areas to be further investigated.
And can someone read to me what was there previously? Because I can't see it. I can't read it.
Note the dash lines are an approximate representation of the location of ecological enhancement / greenbelt areas to be further investigated.
So exactly the same.
Oh,
Okay,
No,
that is
no.
it.
That's
No.
a new one, is it?
What was there previously? That's
I
what
think they've updated this plan to show that. I don't know what was there previously.
Ecological enhancement.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, now I've got map 2 here, and it said nothing except ecological enhancement / green belt.
Yeah.
Yes.
An approximate representation of the location. Yes,
So happy with that?
yes.
If you could scroll down just a little bit. No, the other way. Sorry, go scroll up. Scroll up. Keep going. Keep going. The paragraph that begins with within. It might be over the page.
Within.
There. On the second line there, it uses the term often acting as a buffer between urban and rural areas.
Yes.
I've circled that and written a transition zone on the basis of almost what you were talking about before.
Yes, look, this
And,
is,
you know, we're saying it's ecological, productive land. It's all green. That might not necessarily be the case. It may be bespoke development within a green context. I
Yeah.
don't, you know, that's why I thought maybe the use of the word, you know, transition.
Is there a definition for the word transition? How is that determined in planning cases? Nothing.
it's not an RMA term.
Hmm.
Could I just give you an example of why I raised this concept that if you define a green belt in planning terms, that normally corresponds to protection against urban development. An example I know best as well is the area between, for those who know Hastings and Havelock North, there's a green belt that the councils there have held on to by hook or by crook, and it is basically you can grow apples and crops and have a paddock with sheep in it, but you cannot develop it for housing. And that's why I'm saying, well, I'm questioning either by the mapping or those words in the paragraph we've got there, is this either saying it is a buffer? And is it a planning tool to maintain areas of green spaces around urban areas? Because if you go down and look at the bottom of the plan, we can move down there. Someone who's controlling the planning map, the map 2.
Oh, this,
The other screen, sorry. We can bring that up.
Yeah.
Around Wollaston. I think the panel needs to be quite cautious about this.
It's not clear about, for those 2 lines around Lincoln and Rolleston. I suspect the intention was to indicate that there would be a preference for Lincoln and Rolleston not to join up.
Yes, maybe
That's
Nicole,
what it
this
said.
might be a step
Necessarily
back.
say that.
Or are we comfortable as a panel? Because this brings in, I raised on Thursday that if you think about, these are indicative. The staff are saying, council saying to us, council officers, this is just high level, drawing a big ring around things. Belts in the next level of planning documents are real things where you do have a hard mapping and policy provisions to lock those in. Can you help us, Liz?
I think what I'm hearing from you is that, I might be wrong, is that you're probably comfortable with the idea of it being explored as a concept. But I wonder if the question that you're asking yourselves is, should there actually be lines on the map though, which indicates that there is a bit more of a fixed idea about where they might go.
How do you do that?
I'm just referring, if you go back to
The
where we
words.
were,
The words,
the
Grant?
words,
Yes.
and the second paragraph, the third paragraph just above where that recommendation was. So just scroll up a bit more. It's got this is clearly signaled, and then it's got a bit about as part of developing an integrated blue-green network strategy, that there's some further work being recommended as a standalone document that will be explored in more detail. So to my mind, the indicative conceptual thing is fine, but it's subject to development of a more defined strategy. And I'm just wondering if if people agree that we put something from that paragraph into a recommendation that a further
More specific.
Yeah,
I think the officers have tried to capture that by the amendment to the notation saying to be further investigated.
right. Okay.
So I think this,
I think it could be
it was
stronger
also,
than further investigated, because there's actually anticipated that there'll be a strategy.
Yeah, developed
So
as a standalone strategy.
I'm with you.
so that's in the joint work program, is that what you mean?
Well-
Either or there
And
or in.
So I think you might want to go to, so the joint work program includes the blue-green network strategy, brackets, including greenbelt concept,
Yes.
and then mentions that the strategy will also include investigating options to establish a greenbelt action plan.
Right.
And then in direction 3.5, I think might be where it's useful to go to.
What page are we on? with
So
the-
we're on bottom of page 58 of the Appendix B.
Yes. Okay. My suggestion, panel, is that we flag in our recommendations box that the notation on map 2, I'm not sure whether it's on map 14 as well,
Yeah, it is.
14, 2 and 14 requires further clarification regarding the approximation, or regarding the approximation and further work signaled in the approximation off the lines of the and the further work signaled in 3.5 and the work program.
So perhaps just to be clear, Grant, the paragraph that you were reading from in the officer's report is actually quoting direction 3.5.
Right, okay. Yep.
So the wording there lines up.
Yes, explore. I do think we should ask specifically the question, do we really want or need the green belt swathes shown on maps 2 and 14? Given their potential misinterpretation is all I'm saying. I'm not suggesting it for anything else.
So who are you asking that question of?
The panel.
Just two things for me. I'm just, rather than the word lines, I would put approximation of the conceptual graphic. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to retain them is that it is the interface, when I call it transition, but it is the interface between higher density urban growth and current rural land. And as you know, we have an opportunity to provide more thought into how that transitions, rather than just a blanket no-go. It could be transitioned so that there are blue-green infrastructure connecting, and they could be really broad. They could be food sources and everything. But yeah, so I favour keeping them in, but with the knowledge that there's another document potentially will be prepared.
Okay. Rest of the panel.
I think that to remove them at this point in the process raises questions. It's
quite a feature of what's been proposed by the partnership, aren't
so
they?
to raise questions, it's like,
Help me with this then. I read a article last week, I think in the local press, where there was a large subdivision proposed near Lincoln that would effectively look to join up Lincoln with Wollaston.
Rollickin.
And I also read something about the fact that it was able to sort of be approved because of the timing of it had missed some policy. I can't recall the facts about that, but that was the theme of the newspaper article. Can anyone help me with that?
Yeah, that was the article that was referring to Rollickin, isn't it?
Sorry?
Rollickin. Combination of Rolleston and Lincoln.
And is that in the Greenbelt area shown on our conceptual lines?
Yes.
So has the horse bolted in that particular area? Or is it still uncertain? Is it subject to some process?
I'm not aware of, I did read the article, but I haven't translated that to actually being something going on the ground as such. I didn't look at it further.
Yeah.
Has there been any, I'm just thinking about the submitters that came to see us, has there been ones who have actually, because I don't remember anyone actually saying to remove them?
Oh, submitted. Yes, there were several
There were
submitters.
some, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And
But
it's
wasn't-
I think on this basis that they weren't opposed to the concept, but
Yeah.
as soon as you put lines on the map, it indicates that that's where they will go. I think that was the concern.
Okay, yeah.
which is what we're asking ourselves
Yeah.
as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Um,
I think one thing it might help to add is that what I understand Stephen is raising is not saying remove them in the sense of not have the strategy about green belts and have that future work program. It's only talking about not showing the lines on the map. So the concept and the forward work program and all of that would remain. It would only be in terms of whether the dashed line on the map.
So we've had Grant speaking for the reasons he thinks they should stay, because a pitch tells 1,000 words and digging around and policy document wording. I got a sense that that was supported.
Yes, because to remove them now at this stage in the process really actually shines, I think it's counterproductive almost. And I'm comfortable with the fact that there's reference for there's further work to be done. I'd like that strengthening on the words of referencing the further work to be done a little bit stronger, so people know that that there is something in play.
Okay.
So
To the strategy.
Kathy, can you go to the other document and go to section 3.5? So I think this might be where we need to look at the words.
Yes.
So the first question is, I think, I'm not sure who raised it, but that second line where it says buffer, whether that should be changed to transition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's capture that in our recommendation wording.
Yep.
So if you go back to that.
Oh, if you keep talking about this and I'll just capture it as you
Okay.
talk.
Yes, because I think the first question I've posed, the key question is the panel is supportive of keeping the conceptual lines on maps 2 and 14. That's what I've got.
Yes,
Yes.
because they've identified that they are approximate only
Yes.
in this work. Yeah.
Second point is in our notes, using Victoria's words, we need to strengthen the narrative around the fact that
Piece of work yet to be
piece of
done.
work's coming and they're only figurative. I quite like the term figurative rather than indicative, but we can play around with those terms, Liz and I, and come back to the panel with our suggested strengthening wording.
Because to my mind, to not do this leads to that full-on urban sprawl like we've seen in Auckland, where all of the suburbs become all joined up.
Yep.
And you lose that concept of community and identity around our different villages that we've got surrounding Christchurch, which is quite unique to Christchurch, with your Lincoln and your Prebbleton and your Wollaston. That's my own personal thoughts around it, because that villagey feel is unique and is quite special to that sense of belonging and community well-being. That's what I think, which is why I would like to see it remain, for the avoidance of doubt.
Okay.
And we also used to have fixed boundaries around our town, those towns as well,
You had like clear urban
until the
limits.
NPSUD came in, and then, yeah.
But
I looked up Google to find out what Google says, and there's a whole raft of different versions of what it is. What does it mean? But so I really like it. But it talks about there's other things that we've got on that list, and in terms of resilience to climate change is
Mm.
pretty important. Recreation for a big population becomes a bit of a carbon sink potential. So having it as a predominantly green spatial connections there that are of large scale, that's to me, that's what that means.
So in that case, would the panel support strengthening the could to the wood to wood? Greenbelt around Greater Christchurch urban areas would help limit,
Yes. Yep.
because I think that's
Yeah.
part of the strengthening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's where I feel we're all comfortable with that, as Grant's
Yeah.
elegantly described.
In that last sentence, do you just want to add, I think this is a point that you raised last week, Victoria, that the wording being added to the map legends of the dashed lines being an approximate representation to be further investigated could be pulled into that last
Yes.
sentence.
So after Greater Christchurch, as mapped, as shown on maps.
Watching. As an
2 and
approximate, as an
14.
approximation on maps.
Do you want to, or do you want to say as conceptual? Is that the word you
concept-
like?
It's conceptually shown.
No, but we've
Oh,
already,
yeah.
already got the concept at the start of
Oh,
the
yeah.
sentence.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, yes, it is.
And I think it would be need rather than needs. This is-
No, I think it's
Or
needs.
needs?
I
Is
think
it
it's needs.
Needs.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
And this will be undertaken as part of this development. Yep.
Okay, I
Mm.
think this has been a really important discussion.
Mm.
We're comfortable where we've landed?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to our notes, if you can show us what we've got.
Something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just go up to the paragraph you got above that?
This one?
Important to retain, does it say identity or
Oh,
identify?
yeah, it should do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Well done.
Well done.
We're moving on.
Opportunity 4.
So can we have lunch after opportunity 4 is done?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the affordable housing, supporting thriving neighbourhoods, etc. Future housing development.
So this bit sort of talks, I suppose, about the overall concept and the background to why I suppose, concentration on intensification and around key transport corridors has been considered. It talks about the relationship with the transport packages, focus on centres.
Can we just, sorry, can we just scroll up again? I want to capture in my mind the next, go up again, another paragraph. Okay, the best performing compact combination was the compact land use scenario with transport package 3, MRT and additional policy interventions. However, this combination fell short of key criteria, notably VKT. Can someone help me there?
Reduction.
Vehicle kilometres travelled.
And emissions. Report acknowledges that additional transport interventions are needed to meet anticipated ERP and VKT reduction targets. In the urban form scenario evaluation, MRT was a critical transport package for reducing emissions. But in previous work on MRT found that its viability depends on intensification occurring along the corridors. So this is the critical analysis piece about why intensification has to go along side by side with MRT to make it viable. But some submitters are thinking that's too central city centric, as we say here. Okay, so carry on. Sorry, Liz, I wanted to really focus on that. We're talking about the compact scenario, which has been adopted.
So that other paragraph might be useful. It's not monocentric, it is polycentric because it's focused on more than one centre, even if one has more emphasis. Yep.
Okay. And we've certainly got we've had the idea about the further afield areas, Dunsandel, Amberley raised. And the fact that we had a number of submitters talking about Eastern Christchurch still offers some significant opportunities for target intensification. And I think the officers in Mark reconfirmed that was the case when we talked to them on Thursday. Which comes back to our priority areas discussion, which is on our list of things to do, Liz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I might just
For the recommendations in.
So I suppose in essence, the recommendations are to retain that general approach. So the only real recommendation in this section was just to acknowledge that large lot residential zoning should be included in the urban area, because under the NPS the National Planning Standards, that is a residential zone, it is considered urban.
Yes. And so that's come in, hasn't it?
Yes.
To the map. So where can you point to where that is?
So it's on maps. Well, it's essentially on maps 2 and 14.
2 and 14. But those have been expanded, the grey areas, is that right?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
As between what was in the draft and what we have now? Yes, you look at page 25 of our working version and D, amend to include any existing LLR, Z and Greater Christchurch as part of the existing urban area. So my understanding is that that map on 24 has been amended to include those areas.
Yeah, in the revised version. Yeah.
Okay. This is quite intense stuff, people. So how are we all feeling? We'll just capture our recommendations here, which needs to go back to the panel recommendation. We're comfortable to support the partnerships selection of, I suppose, growth, high-level growth strategy relating to this matter. I think I'm seeing nods around the table. Grant's got a question.
We've got no.
Is there a reference in here to, apart from the MRT study, I can't see any mention of the Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan that that this is sort of derived from, this whole idea of core routes and supported by MRT.
Certainly when I was reading above, it was referring to basically an options assessment for which.
That was part of it, yeah.
Tracy?
I know that since we looked at it on an integrated basis, we were talking about transport kind of leading to that.
And that's through a broader document 2018 to 2028. Which is,
being the RPTP.
yeah. But,
So you wanting to see that reference?
well, I think it would be perhaps useful because it goes hand in hand with the spatial planning work, which was predominantly the MRT component of that.
Makes sense to me. So just type in,
Just
um,
check that there'll be wording in that.
yes, so check references to the
I guess the interrelationship between.
interrelationship with the compact scenario and the document.
Canterbury Regional Transport Plan,
Dates.
2018 to 2028.
Okay, that's good.
Uh,
So we'll capture that. I'll come back to Victoria.
No, I'm okay.
Comfortable with to support the high level, probably compact growth strategy as discussed above or by the officers.
Look, my only comment was that if we don't, it just unravels everything that's in this document.
Well, I also think we've considered as a panel the reasons and listened to the submitters and the officers. So we need to be cognizant that nothing's persuaded us otherwise. If that's the case, we can go forward with key recommendations. That's where we're at. Don't like it.
I'm with Robbie as well, but it is, yeah, that's the way it is.
And just to note that while those were the growth strategies, that target intensification is really where the plan is rated to say, which is subtly but importantly different from the compact growth. So there is growth and intensification that's driven around the transport and all the other items, as opposed to compact does potentially for some sound like it's central to see.
So could we reword that panel recommendation there to something more tuned into where the partnership?
That's the target that you support. What I'm hearing, correct me, but that you're supporting that targeted intensification as outlined in the growth strategy.
High level targeted intensification, which outlined in the growth strategy as set it out by officers above.
there was agreement, I thought, in the Greater Christchurch in the partnership. There were three options we were looking at: compact, a dispersal, and the other one. And I think it was. I thought we did agree on the compact.
Target, I'm referring to the document, which is where the targeted intensification came in, because I think there was my understanding is that there was a recognition that growth was required throughout the Greater Christchurch area, but that it needed to be really targeted and focused around the key drivers, as opposed to a pure compact form. But I'm open to panel.
Targeted intensification is what's the wording used in that overarching direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Targeted intensification in urban and town centres and along public transport corridors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, thanks for that clarification, Tracy and Liz. We're all comfortable that this is the right recommendation, even though there are other obviously other views and opinions, but on balance, we do favour this.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Oh.
Right, let's continue with opportunity 4.
So this is more specifically about opportunity 4.
Yes.
And the directions. There's quite a few submitters seeking specific wording changes, but the outcome of all that, I think, is to refer at the opportunity level to diverse, quality and affordable housing in locations that support thriving neighbourhoods.
Yes.
Making sure the direction around sufficient capacity says at least, which is consistent with the NPS for
Yes.
urban development.
Yes.
Again, a reference in the direction to quality housing. And just removing reference to just community infrastructure and talking about infrastructure more broadly.
I thought we got to change.
No, so that's an F and G. Initially, it was recommended that social infrastructure was removed as a key term because it wasn't used. They then discovered that it was effectively used.
Yes.
So they've made some changes, which you can see there,
Which
is just to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I certainly support, because that was at the heart of some of the
Yeah.
a lot of the submissions.
But I think the recommendation E is a different point.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
Just conscious looking at the submitters on that the Ashton consultants. I think it's more general that we're talking about anyway, just bringing it up.
Yeah.
The Ashtons, were they supportive of this in your memory, or?
Well, they're just looking at what the discussion and that opportunities looking up to. But I think it's more general we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm all right staying here.
Yes, because there's opportunity for, there's some tweaks here which are certainly responsive to the RPS, at least the fact that quality housing is defined. We brought back the term social infrastructure. Yes, so in the round, are we comfortable to support the officers? Grant?
Pretty good. I wonder if you could scroll up to up a little bit to just below the third paragraph below the start of 4.5.2.
5.2.
The third paragraph there, and yeah, the last sentence there, we recommend that quality housing is included, recommends a brief description of quality housing be inserted into the spatial plan. Does
that come in, do you think?
I don't
See where that is.
Yeah, I just don't, there's no sort of definition, but there is that in that other group working on housing. Kate, I don't, there's a, yeah, is that something that's
so
that they do?
There is an additional recommendation which I don't think shows up here.
Oh, okay.
Kathy, can you go to page sorry, 68? So it's that additional bit there, Grant, that's on the screen.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So this is, so you're right that they've recommended it. I think they've not necessarily set it out there, but this is what they've added.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Does that take in, remember the accessible community, they had a name for the type of housing planning that they did for housing?
University design
University
standards.
design standards, yeah. I know we've got it in under transport. But I don't think we've got it.
It's
under
it's
housing.
probably about whether you think it needs specific mention in there, or whether
Yeah,
you think it's covered broadly by talking about meeting the diverse needs of the community.
Yeah, so it probably is picked up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
ensures that individuals, whānau and communities can live well.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that, are you happy with that, Gail?
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Huh?
as a principled thing, I've written down, you know, the guidance documents, but it's probably in the implementation stage with reference to delivering on those with the urban design protocol as an example of best practice sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think
That would be a non-statutory guidance, which is what we've referred to that anyway, haven't we? In the implementation section.
Yeah, so in the implementation section, and the action is a joint housing action plan.
But Grant, are you looking to
No, I
that
think
theme off the,
down the
as
bottom, the non-statutory tools to assess, propose and implement a suite of non-statutory tools that will give effect to the spatial plan and enable delivery of a joint work program. So I would think in order to deliver that,
yes,
you'd have a range of tools, and that could be, you know.
yeah. So you're comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, panel. So we're back to our recommendation box on this one.
Mm. 9.
We
Comfortable?
agree with the suite of
Mm.
minor changes.
Are we, just for point of clarification, are we looking at the boxes for directions on page 60 of the ROR?
This has changed now because we're sort of in the working, so we're looking at, they're on 31, 67, 73.
No,
36.
yeah, so which page were you on, Victoria?
I was on page 60 and 61.
Yeah.
So page 60 is shows one of those changes, but in essence it's to, sorry, bear with me.
So we're looking at,
It's so because the direction is repeated in different places, but at the bottom of page 60, it's got it set out there: deliver thriving neighbourhoods with quality developments, quality housing,
yeah,
and supporting
page 60 is
infrastructure.
the guts of it. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so go to the recommendation and record the panel supports these changes. Given, I also think there's quite a lot of submissions on these from people, so if the reasons given as they reflect number of submissions raised in submissions, something like that would be good. And we can flesh that out in the report.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. Right, we're moving on to Greenfield and urban sprawl.
Oh, sorry, we've done these.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've done those
We had
ones.
these. We're back
Yes. I
to.
was going to say,
Oh. So we're into intense.
suddenly remember that.
Yeah.
The naughty girls chair.
Vanished.
Yeah.
Vanished.
So this is more specifically, sorry, jumping ahead past the two we did this morning, we're into the intensification submissions. The key thing from submissions being of those that support it, it's subject to it being done well.
Mm.
And again, I think they note the recommendations that we've just talked about adding reference to quality. And this is where that recommendation we looked at before, I think, comes in, Grant, just there.
Okay.
But if I go back up to so there's some other changes there.
So on page 67 to a start with A. It's on pages 66 to 67 where most of these appear. Quite like the term thriving, it invokes what we're looking for. And on page 68, there's some changes to sense of connection and safety. Any panel discussion about this group of changes recommended?
I'm still catching it up.
Yep.
Check something.
Yes,
So
Kate.
we were gonna add forms of housing into the key terms section, is that still? That's what I had a note of anyway, or did we decide otherwise?
Sorry, the officer's recommendation or which?
Add the term forms of housing into the key terms section at the front of the station there. I think that's got a note that we discussed that.
Yeah, can just speak up a bit on missing.
Yeah, so we added, I've got a note saying that we added, we suggested adding forms of housing as a term into the key terms section at the front of the document and
We did that on
describing
Thursday
it.
afternoon.
Yeah, so
Can we
we,
just double check that?
yeah,
You mean form, or do you add the word typology? A diverse range of housing typology.
I think we added forms because we thought that covered everything.
Okay.
but, or did we go back to?
Sorry, I don't.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Forms of housing.
So it's coming through from a different recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's the one.
There it is.
Which we talked about on Thursday afternoon.
Um,
Yes or not?
I don't remember that, but I don't have a good memory, so I wouldn't rely on my memory.
I do remember us discussing it either in discussions with the council officers.
Mm.
But it looks, what document are we looking at here? On the
Oh,
right,
sorry, I just did a word search, but it's on in the officer's reply. It's the bit before the bit that we're discussing. So bottom of page 66, start of page 67.
Specific forms of housing.
Mm.
But I'm not sure if that's what Kate's talking about or if I'm mixing things up.
So, but I'm just checking that it's still the intention to put a description of the term into the key term.
okay, so you're looking for, is it a key term in the front of the document? Is that
Yeah.
what-
These bits, whether or not we put that in to describe to people what that means.
Well, it's not, as far as I know, it's not currently in the key terms.
Can I have some clarity, please? Which phrase or word are you seeking to define?
Forms of housing.
Which has a definition in the NPSUD.
No, I don't think so.
So
But we decided on that description, and I think we probably, maybe I can't remember whether we defined what that meant and that we were going to put it into the key terms.
I don't, well, can we just go back?
So,
We're flicking around on my screen. We've got these new words, specific forms and alternative approaches to housing,
Mm.
which comes in at page 66
yeah.
of the document. which is our second, our 14th of November version.
Mm.
So there is in effect a section in here, because there's a definition of greenfield, social. Have you got page 66, Kate?
Yep.
So above that, we've got essentially these concepts of social and affordable housing needs,
Mhm.
greenfield, civic forms and alternative approaches to housing. In my mind, those two new paragraphs encompass what we're talking about. If you're happy just reading those through,
Yeah.
they can provide a range of preferred lifestyle options, etc., etc. Right?
Yeah, in that same clause there, 72 there, or 87, it's got forms of housing up the top, and then down the bottom, the last line, it's got typologies, tenures, pricing points. So housing, diversity of housing typologies.
Mm.
That's all in there.
So that's all in there anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Forms of housing I take to be potentially a spatial thing, broader scale vision. Yeah.
They span the housing continuum from social housing through to private housing in the open market. Yeah.
Because the next section goes into more of that. The one housing provision. We just looking at the recommendations from that one.
Yes. So the rest of those are in the balance of opportunity 4 over the page on page 68 and 60, 67, 68, Nicole.
It's new page. Yeah, 66, 67.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yep. So back to our recommendations, I think. Liz?
Yeah.
Oh, so Kathy.
So back to this, sorry. This one?
Yes.
No,
So
sorry.
this is a panel, this is a recommendation we were at. So we agree with the officer recommendations.
Yep.
For the reasons outlined. Probably everyone shaking their head or nodding their head. Thank you.
Okay.
What's next? So we're nearly at the end of 4 because I feel we need some fuel.
Yeah.
Yep, I think so.
Okay, so next one's housing provision.
That's what I was just talking about.
Yes, I think this is
Already
where we
looked
get
at.
into this.
Okay.
So this is getting into this, the types of housing and housing choice. Accommodating all age groups, providing a full range.
Yes.
Et cetera, and that's where this recommendation that we accidentally started talking about comes in.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is on pages 72.
So if you go to 60,
Nine.
if you start at 63, I think in the officer's reply, you get your first change, which is to add in reference in direction 4.4, which is talking about housing choice and affordability. The reference right at the bottom of the page to providing for diverse forms of housing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if you go to 66,
Yep.
bottom of 66, this is additional thing that we talked about before, specific forms and alternate approaches.
Yes.
Over the page. And then there was reference in there somewhere too to the including specific mention of its social and affordable housing.
Yes.
Which I've lost.
I think that's in,
Oh, it's before that, yes, and social and affordable housing needs.
yes,
Okay. And then those two, and oh, sorry, that's all of them.
okay. So the panel, we agree with those recommendations from our officers? Yes, so I agree. And we might be at,
So Kaiang and Nohoanga,
yes,
no particular submissions. So it looks as if there weren't any particular submissions around this.
so this was well covered by, it's like, in terms of mana whenua.
Yeah.
So just agree there, I think, with the recommendations. Happy with that.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
And the last thing is connected neighbourhoods.
So no specific recommendations, I think, but noting that changing that vibrant communities to thriving neighbourhoods.
Yes.
Recommendation already made.
All good, panel? Yes. We agree.
Yeah, you could get into describing what the spatial context of a neighbourhood is, but I don't think we need to do that.
Not here. But I think this, what we've got up on the screen now, is the essence of looking at options available, day-to-day needs and services,
Yeah.
connected neighbourhoods. Think that people still need cars. Okay, well, if we agree with that, I think I really like the way the officers have outlined their report. I think
Yeah.
it flows along really well, and for us as decision makers, just following the way they've outlined things that refer to submissions.
Because you had a few submitters come and talk to you about this in terms of the 15-minute neighbourhoods,
Yes,
I think we could just reiterate the response by officers around it's not about limiting people, it's actually about improving quality of life.
Yeah.
do you want to just type
Yeah.
that in?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yes, please.
Okay. That's opportunity 4.
I just think quality of life, social interaction is something that comes from the neighbourhood idea as well.
Right, so I think we've finished recommendation 4. Sorry, direction 4. It's 4 minutes to 1. Time for some food and a break.
Yep.
We've done incredibly well this morning. I think covered a lot of our recommendations we need to think about with some great discussion. We'll take an hour for a break, or would we rather take a shorter break and carry on?
Yeah.
Shorter break, half an hour.
Yep.
Come back at 1:30-ish. Thank you.